All right, welcome everybody to the regularly stated meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. This is the commission meeting for Thursday, December 19th, 2024. This is to formally advise that as required by General Law, Chapter 38, Sections 18 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on June 16, 2021, as extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. The Yarmouth Conservation Commission will hold a public meeting at the date and time noted above. The public is welcome to attend either in person or via the alternative public access provided above. Again, this is the meeting for the Yarmouth Conservation Commission, Thursday, December 19th, 2024. Is there anybody making a recording of this hearing? I see none. All right. Our first order of business is a request for a minor plan revision. This is SE 83-2433, Paul Mancuso, BSC Group for Christy Sharon, 19 Kroll Road. There's a construction of a single-family dwelling within the flood zone, proposed pool, shed, and larger dwelling.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Members, for the record, my name is Kieran Healy. I'm a land surveyor with the BSC Group, representing the owner of the properties, Denise and Joseph Champagne. We're here tonight to look to modify a plan that was previously approved by this commission earlier this year. In general, it's pretty much the same thing in that it is a single-family residence on a lot where the resource area is the flood zone. There are no wetlands within 100 feet of the property. We are proposing to enlarge the house somewhat and to add a pool at the rear of the house. The total amount of grading hasn't really changed. It's still in the same location. We have provided swales and trench drains and slopes along the property lines to make sure that we don't have any water running off the property. We had done quite an amount of grading back when we originally submitted this to make sure that the surface water stayed on the property. And you can see the swales we have along the entire property. Other than that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, questions from the board? No. Brittany, anything?
Is this area relatively flat for the shed to be placed there?
The shed is going to be set on sonotubes, so it's going to be elevated.
Okay. And the swales have been calculated for the new coverage, or were they just originally to contain the water that will come off the slopes?
They're just there for the water coming off the slopes. I think that's the question you asked me. I'm sorry.
Sorry. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody in the audience have any comments, questions on this one? Anybody on Zoom? Raise your hand digitally. I see none. Unless there's further discussion from the board, would somebody like to make a motion? What are we doing here? To accept the plan revision for the plan dated October 29th, 2024?
I will.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. Thank you, Brittany.
Right. Paul, could you handle the next, the continued notice for Weir Road?
Sure. I move down there? Or?
Either way, whatever makes you more comfortable.
Looking good.
Thank you. I'll see you a little bit.
This is a continued notice of intent, SC 883-2456, Paul Revere for Doreen and Harvey Wright, 370 Ware Road. Proposed removal of culvert / stream crossing within land under water bodies.
Thank you, Acting Chairman. In any event, I don't think we have anything to add. Ms. Di Rienzo came up with some additional conditions. I made a minor modification, just clarifying it, and I think we're in agreement unless the board has any questions of me or after Ms. Di Rienzo.
No, that's all.
Nothing to say.
We received the DEP number, and the only comment they had was to make sure that the buffer zones, if they were damaged, that they were restored. And the special conditions we discussed at the last meeting were that the slope that was created after the dam was removed be blanketed and seeded for erosion control, that no stream crossing be replaced right now without a new notice of intent, and that that the grade at the bottom of the stream bank matched the original conditions. So those are what the order of conditions would have as special conditions from the board.
Any questions from the board regarding it? No. Jack? No. Bradford? Any questions from the audience, or any comments from the audience? Anything from Zoom? Seeing none? May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved, and the motion is, let's just repeat it so that,
To issue an order of conditions with special conditions.
okay, all right, okay. Have a second?
I'll second.
Jack, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And just let the
So-
record show that Commissioner Bauer signed the Mullins form. He reviewed the minutes. He wasn't present at the first meeting, but
Oh.
he reviewed the minutes so that he could vote.
I was wondering if Ed had reviewed the minutes.
He did not, so that's,
Thank you very much.
Now I have to relinquish my power?
unless Mr. Hoops would join us again. Just one second.
Oh, maybe I will.
Thank you.
Is that
I guess he doesn't
everything
have to
covered
quick.
properly then?
Say it again?
Everything was covered properly?
Yeah, that's fine.
Maybe he's not coming back. You think? I can go on.
Yeah, you can read it into the record and he'll join
Okay,
back
the
in.
next item is an enforcement. Crowell Beach Association, Crowell Road, unpermitted reconstruction of a stockade fence within a coastal beach and velocity flood zone. Gentlemen?
So for this item, we should see if the chairman is going to join us.
Huh?
I'm just going to go see if the chairman is ready to join us.
Just, well, yeah, we'll see what happened. Just take it easy for a second. Well,
Taking it easy. It's Christmas.
this would be an exciting part for people from home to be watching if they were, you know?
He'll be right in, but I'll give the board a summary of the violation.
Okay, so we can begin?
Yeah,
Okay. Gentlemen?
no, so I'll give a summary for violation.
You will, that's right, it's enforcement, I'm sorry.
So, sorry, bear with me one second. This is the end of Kroll Road. There's an association beach there. They have kayak racks, and there was an existing stockade fence. There's an observation of fence material on site, and I sent our contact for the association, Carl Valeria, an email letting him know that reconstruction of the site of the fence would require a building permit and permission with conservation. A couple of weeks later, the fence was constructed, and I sent a violation notice to attend. The only condition was to attend a meeting to discuss next steps, because the area is within a velocity flood zone, and we don't allow stockade fences any longer. While there was an existing stockade fence there, reconstruction in the velocity zone and any other area requires that the applicant have more, that they comply as much as they can with our existing regulations. So that would mean some improvement on the fence, even if it was existing, to better conform with our current regulations. And so here is a couple of photos of the fence now. It is completely closed in. On the bottom, there's some wood so that no water can pass through. Probably similar to what was there prior. And so currently our regulations require that any fences within the velocity flood zone allow floodwaters to pass through freely. So that my recommendation to the board would require that this fence be modified to better fit our current regulations, which would mean 6 inches of clearance at the bottom, and perhaps removal of some of the slats. Because if floodwaters come up here and hit the fence, it can easily become redirected and channelized, which we no longer allow with our current regulations, and increase velocity through that small opening up the street. So we're just trying to improve the flood zone. I understand you had a fence there prior, but we are trying to get some improvement when you do redevelopment. Sorry for that. So the board can discuss how next steps, you want to handle next steps.
Okay, do we want any discussion from the board at this particular time? Yeah. okay.
Discussion with the board, and then we'll hear from the applicant.
We would
Or
like,
the
obviously, to
homeowners.
make
Yeah, you
a
will.
statement as well.
You will.
I was just going to say that in another beach property, we did the split rails,
Yeah.
and it worked very well for that area, same type of deal. And just let you know, that's what we told them, and that's what they did.
Okay, Jack?
No questions.
Bradford?
I don't have questions.
Yeah, my question has to do, just so I understand. This is an unpermitted fence right from the beginning.
So the association had a fence there. It's been existing
Okay.
there for a long time.
Yep.
But they did reconstruct a new stockade fence in its place. They did replace it. But even if we're replacing an existing structure, we want it to better comply with our current regulations.
right.
And rebuilding a fence does require a building permit.
Yeah, it requires, okay, so it didn't have a building permit. And it's also a type of fence that is not
Yeah,
typically,
so we would be, I know there's a stockade fence, there was a stockade fence.
Fence has
there.
been there for 40 years.
Yes, it has. But when you're putting in a new fence in an area that's sensitive, especially in the velocity flood zone that experiences waves up to greater than 3 feet in height, we want to be meeting our current regulations as more closely than in the past, so to provide an improvement on the area instead of maintaining the status quo with this boundary that can have a negative impact on the flood zone.
okay, so we want to hear from these individuals right now, or Ed, do you want to?
I'm going to abstain because I didn't come in, I only came in halfway through, so.
Right, okay. Gentlemen?
Yeah, no, certainly I'd like to make a statement. So I'm Dave Meadows. I'm actually one of the property abutters to the Crowell Beach parking lot. Obviously, we've owned that parking lot since for the last 60 years. It's been recorded in page, or book 1440, page 933. The fence was there. It's always been a way to demarcate the parking lot area from the beach area. It's been a stockade fence that whole time. Obviously, from time to time, the fence had to be repaired, and those panels have been replaced over that period of time. The fence serves several purposes. One, it delineates the parking lot from the beach. It also provides privacy for some of the residents up the road, as you can see, which is helpful for those residents and the abutters. And then, more importantly, it acts as a safety barrier for families that are on the beach, to really prevent, an automobile or car from kind of running up onto the beach and causing, a very bad accident. Earlier this year, the Crowell Beach Association, which it's about 100 members, they approved us to use some funds to address some issues. Some of the repairs were the bike racks in the parking lot, as well as some signs that we've fixed. And then we also did notice, as we went through that the fence needed to be repaired. So we replaced 3 panels, which was about 24 linear feet. In fact, we actually, Brittany, maybe it wasn't very clear, we actually took out a full panel as well. So we did actually widen the area. That was the walk through to the beach. That got widened by roughly about 4.5, 5 feet. So if you also look at other areas on the Lewis Bay area, this is very similar to other stockade fencing. Obviously, you can see one in the picture there from the abutter right there. Obviously, on the other side of the parking lot, there is also a stockade fence, which is of a plastic type. If you go further down Lewis Bay Road, the Englewood Shores Association, they actually have a stockade fence there, both from Lewis Bay Road to the beach area. They also have another stockade fence about midway down the beach, as well as they have a stockade fence going the west side along the beach all the way to the water. And then further, if you go to 194 Barry Avenue, they have a stockade fence as well that runs up right up to the beach about.
I'm just going to interrupt
4
right
weeks.
there. I
No,
do
Please let me
understand.
finish my statement. So for us, we did not believe we needed a permit to, replace the fence panels. The project was completed by some volunteers of the community, and we did not, understand that a permit was required. As we did the work, it only took a couple hours. So certainly, we want to resurrect the situation and put this behind us, and certainly come up with a solution that's workable, that really protects the abutters and the folks that are in the community, as well as, honoring some of the requests from the Conservation Committee.
The fact of the matter, and maybe I can get a little help on this, is that what exists in the area, okay, is separate from this particular issue. Okay, so one thing is taken at a time, quite possibly. Secondly, you did the work without a permit. Okay, you needed a permit, and you didn't get it, and that's a problem.
But I've owned property in South Yarmouth for many years, and I've replaced fences, and I've had contractors replace fences, and no permits were ever required for
Well, they
those
should have
fences.
gotten a permit. Okay, simple as that. A lot of people get involved in putting things up without a permit, and then things like this happen. And then the other thing is, I understand it, and maybe I need some help with that, is that fence does not comply with our regulations in terms of the difficulty with the flowage of water through there. So that's a very, very important aspect to this particular problem, I think. And so that has to be rectified, in my opinion.
We could address the bottom of the fence.
It sounds like Brittany was suggesting, Carl
ahead.
Valeri, president of Coral Beach Association. It sounds like what Brittany was suggesting is if we were to terminate below one of the rails, which would get us the 6 inches or more
Yeah.
underneath, and cut that and then take out various slots along the way, hopefully aesthetically something that's consistent, that would diffuse the issue regarding,
That would be
Water.
preferable.
yeah.
Sounds like it would be acceptable.
Yeah, so to create some sort of flow so that the water is not being impeded by a solid
Yeah, that can
stockade
happen on
fence.
both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is what I was suggesting. And so from this picture, so now there's 2 panels on each side. Is this 2 panels on one side and 3? This is the old one.
That's the old one. So there's actually only now 2 panels on the one side where your mouse is.
Okay, so it's
And
smaller
on
here.
the other side, there's a large panel and then a small panel.
Okay,
So it's 16 feet on one side and roughly 12 feet on the other side. But again, we did widen it though, so.
So that seems like relatively easy fix to at least comply with what the new requirements are.
Now, what about the permit? Is there a need to go back for a permit?
I'll have to discuss with building, but yes, generally when you're constructing a fence greater than, I think it is 6 feet in height, I have to confirm with them, you need a building permit, and that would have flagged me requiring conservation permission. So kind of could have avoided this, but yes, so you may need to file an after-the-fact building permit with the building department. But I think with those 2, it would be an enforcement order with those 2 requirements would rectify the situation.
I'm sorry, the last part of it?
Yeah,
Apologize.
an enforcement order requiring 6 inches of clearance at the bottom and the removal of slats consistently to allow water to flow through. Whether that be, we probably should define it with the board. Do you have any idea how wide these are?
I mean, our preference would be not to remove the slats. It would be just to do the.
Not all
do
of the
bottom.
slats, but I think we would need to remove some of the slats so that it wouldn't,
So each of those slats, I think, are 3.5 inches wide.
Yeah, they're just the standard
Yep.
stockade picket kind
yeah.
of.
Yes.
But I am concerned about the aesthetic look of it,
The what?
just the aesthetics of it,
Oh.
with respect to the other fencing that it's directly on the abutter's property.
I think our regulations do have a width requirement, I think, though. So we would have to create spaces, I think, every other slat, or 2 slats and then 2 slats in a consistent manner. Let me pull them up.
Yeah, I don't think that we have any jurisdiction over aesthetics at all. And it's the functionality of things that's our concern.
And the fence has been there, but the fence has been there for 40 years.
Well, there's a lot of things around town that have been there for a long time that shouldn't have been there, to tell you the truth. In my experience on this committee, things went by the boards or whatever, and a lot of times these things are corrective, okay, that we see. And these things are basically designed to protect the property, because if you leave up barriers and there's a big storm, it's gonna do a lot more harm than if the proper procedures are employed prior to that storm.
So,
Again, my understanding of it.
so if there were just a simple post and rail across the front of it,
That would be no problem.
stockade fence were gone,
That would be no problem.
Post and rail are very, very common, yeah.
Another, the other beach I was talking about, these people had also had a stockade fence that had to be replaced, and that's when they went to the rails. And it worked for them and it worked for I'm just saying, that was
Yeah.
a solution.
Well, obviously, we don't want to do that, but you're going to have to provide us with the enforcement notice that you want us to do, right? I mean, it doesn't sound like we really have a choice. I mean, obviously, we're more than willing to remove this plus 6 inches to provide for
Yeah,
the water
the
flow.
bottom.
Yeah.
But to take out all of those posts, it seems that we might as well take the entire structure down at that point.
Did we
I mean,
say-
if there is there any specific regulation as to, because Brittany, I think you were starting to address it, how many inches apart from each other one that remains?
I think, yeah, it's not in the regulations. I think we just started to write it and decided against that particular one.
So there is no specific criteria for at least the,
Well, fences,
vertical?
stockade fences can't be built in the velocity flood zone, new. So a new stockade fence can't be in there.
But the question had to do with the post. I'm sorry, maybe I missed what you said about the post. You're asking.
no, the slats.
The slats, okay.
Slats.
Well, again, I think that was answered in terms of the fact the stockade fences are not.
Yeah, so it has to have some sort of gaps. We just don't have a defined gap in the regulations, so,
So, one, we definitely have to have clearance below.
yes.
2, there's no specific items with respect to the vertical.
Nothing can be built to block or divert floodwater, so right now it does.
Well, other than the fact that there's this new stockade fence, right? So what I'm saying is, the extent that it is there are no specific regulations, but there could be some compromise or discussion as to the width of all of them, or are we just wasting our time and need to take the entire fence down?
I don't really understand. I think we're just trying, I think we'll leave it a little loose in the enforcement order unless we decide differently. There needs to be spaces provided
Yep.
consistently across each panel. Whether that's every other or every 2.
Whatever looks better.
Yeah,
It
you-
has to be there.
Those could be the options, but they just need to be consistent.
Okay, so short of removing it all, those would be our choices with respect to
Sounds like it.
Mm-hmm.
the gaps.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I, first of all, I think that there's been some contention on this over time and not coming to the proper people to get the permits. So that's number one. Second, that once you take something out, you modify it, whatever you do, and if you need permits, that's one thing, but also you have to follow the new regulations.
Oh, that's become clear.
Okay. And I'm not even sure you buy into that until you just said that.
Yeah.
So I think that the main thing is flowage was probably take out those slats. If you get it strong enough, you might lose some of that fence because you don't allow water to come through. So there's a number of reasons why that applies. It's not just looks or it's because they're trying to protect the resource.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so at this particular point, are you gonna, Brittany, kind of check on what the work they do in terms of opening up the slats, or?
Yeah, we'll follow up, but right now, the special conditions we've discussed are to remove the bottom 6 inches and have a consistent spacing provided with the removal of slats. I also just wanted to discuss, is this on, I can't remember, is this the parking lot side with the trash barrels or the beach side?
Those concretes, those are small, removable concrete blocks on the beach side.
This is on the beach side.
Yeah.
And why are we using those?
Those are there just to support the barrels for trash.
Are the barrels there year-round or they're deployed seasonally?
Year-round,
Do people use them in the winter?
yes.
Can they be stored on the other side?
Not sure, but maybe we have to move the bike rack.
Because you just have a rope holding them in. I'm just worried about them and both the concrete blocks and those becoming storm debris.
Oh, I see, yeah.
We could look at another way to secure it.
Oh, you just take the blocks away.
Yeah, if you could remove the blocks and think about storing this on the other side. I know it's tethered, so it's not a big deal, but the blocks are more of a big deal for storm debris. So we've spoken about those conditions, and if you could complete the work within a month and a half.
Should be done in a couple of weeks.
I mean, I would like maybe a little bit longer period of time. It is the winter.
Yeah, it is the
and-
winter, which is where we experience the biggest storm events, so that's why we really need the work to be done
I
as quickly as
understand,
possible.
You know, it's,
So February 3rd, February 7th.
Okay, do we have to vote on anything here?
You do have to vote to issue the enforcement order with the conditions discussed unless there's any other, for the enforcement order with the conditions as discussed, unless there's any other questions from the board.
The questions from the commission?
Nope.
Okay. Everybody clear on what's going to take place in terms of the enforcement order? Okay. So I have, do I need a
Anybody
motion?
online?
Pardon?
Online?
Oh, online, anybody online?
You don't need to take public comment for
right,
enforcement.
Okay, let me back up. Okay, we don't need public comments. Okay, we're all set then?
You need a
Okay,
motion.
need a motion to accept this,
I'll motion.
all right, Bradford, and second?
I will.
Jack, okay, we're making progress. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, you're clear with all of this? If you have any
Yes.
questions, we could call Brittany and discuss it. Very much for coming in and taking care of this. Oh, you want to take over again?
I'm taking it over again.
Messy.
Is this your,
That get signed?
this is for I assume this is for Weir Road. Did you pass it?
I don't sit there.
Hmm?
I don't sit there.
Yeah, I know.
Did you pass it?
I wasn't here. Did you guys
No, they need to
do
sign
an
it.
order for Weir Road?
Yes.
Yes, you did? Okay.
Got to pass that down.
Yeah, so you need to sign that.
I think I should be fired.
And then you'll also need to sign the enforcement order. And that leaves me,
That's neat. This-
all right, another enforcement order, Karen and David Swan, 1 Windermere Road, failure to remove patio and install native vegetation on dry wells in the riverfront area, buffer zones to coastal bank and salt marsh per a determination of applicability. Brittany?
Yep, there's not much more detail other than in the summary. There's a determination issued in 2008 at this property with an approved plan requiring the removal of a patio and native buffer planting to be installed, which had not been completed. That is it.
All right.
The enforcement order requires that this work be completed. I think there was no, the draft had no date, so we have to decide on a date. Oh, it does have a date. Well, now it's too close, but the dates are January 1st for removal and the restoration completed by the end of May. You guys can come up to the
Do you want to do a hard rule or hard date on the removal, or do you just want to have everything done by May 31st?
I don't need a hard date on the patio, as long as everything's done by May 31st.
Okay, and do you need any, there's special conditions attached, did you,
There's the general planting conditions with just a planting plan,
species, okay,
the regular spacing, no mulch,
okay.
the regular with the monitoring.
All right, any questions from the board?
No.
Not right now.
Okay, do you understand what we're asking?
Yes and no.
Well, there was a determination of applicability that told you to remove the patio, and that was what date?
The determination was issued,
Steve probably knows that.
right?
2008, right?
2008, right?
Yeah, I was looking for the exact. April 10th, 2008.
Okay, and you were
David
the,
and Karen Swan,
you were still the applicant, it was the same applicants, correct?
that's correct.
Yeah, so you were told to remove it in 2008, you didn't, and now we're using the enforcement order to tell you to do that.
Can I go back in time for a minute? So the previous owner, I don't know if anybody remembers the name, Steve Raleigh. He was the previous owner of the property, and he was the one that was made responsible for enforcing all the different criteria here. And I know one of the things that's listed is the dry wells, and by the way, I want to thank a couple of the commission members that did come by the property, including Brittany, just to see the area. So they have, a few have seen the area. And I know the dry wells was taken care of, and the other stuff that was required in there was taken care of. And, obviously, the previous owner, Mr. Raleigh, didn't complete part of the requirements here. I know there was a lot of contention, and again, we heard this through his voice. There was a lot of contention with the wall that was allowed to stay, but some things had to be taken off the wall. And he certainly wasn't happy, not that that matters about his feelings, but with the whole wall situation and the brick pavers and so forth, so.
I mean, that's the year we bought the house and we were understanding that he had taken care of what needed to be taken care of, or I think there's a confusion over who was given this order. I don't recall it being my order. I recall it being his job to do.
Yeah.
And so, because we were considering buying the house. So, there was a transition period there he was emotional about it, Steve was, and we were just wanting to inherit, a house that was okay. So it was our understanding it was now okay, and we bought it. So it's been this way since we bought it. Thinking
So-
that we were okay.
Unfortunately, I mean, the way the Wetlands Protection Act reads is the violation travels with essentially with the title. So, the way we have to look at it is like there was an order that was given to remove the patio. He should have told you that was part of it, but he either did or did not, or gave you some other information. But ultimately, it comes down to you essentially, if you bought the property with violations, you essentially own the violations, are responsible for doing the correction. And so that's where it looks like we stand. But I do remember this. I was on the board at the time. The board was adamant that this be removed. And, that's what it comes down to, is that we were expecting it to be removed. This was a determination, so there's no formal process under the determination of doing any kind of, follow-up checks and that sort of thing. So unfortunately, it's essentially come along to this point, and we're at this point now where we're saying again, we now understand that there is a ongoing violation and it needs to be corrected. It was told that the homeowner was told to correct it. They didn't. They sold the property, and by your buying the property, you inherited the violation and are now required to do the correction.
Is it, because, again, our understanding from the original side of it was, because I know he mentioned to us that there was a lot of discussion about the wall, the infamous wall, and I don't know if you remember that back then. And he actually mentioned to us that there was discussions about having to actually take the wall down. And as I understood things, there was an exception given to keep the wall in there. Obviously, there was some lights on the wall originally, which is when we first looked at the property. There were lights along the wall, which were removed. And
then the wall was to be hidden. It shouldn't be seen from the water side. So already there were what I call Rosa rugosa. I don't know if that's the right name for the plant. We actually planted more of them along the wall to hide the wall and make it part of the, environment.
I mean, the way I remember.
We worked hard to maintain them by taking out weeds that were choking them or whatever, and just trying to keep it nice beyond the wall.
Yeah, the way I remember it is, because we had a major concern that, because if I remember correctly, there was some question as to whether or not any of the decking or anything else was truly legal, and I think at one point or another we allowed the deck, but as part of allowing that deck, it was to remove that patio.
Yep.
Because again, it was, I mean, this, if you came before us today and asked for a patio, or even for that matter, the deck where it is, we'd turn you down. So, I mean, I think that was a compromise that the commission ultimately decided was at least acceptable to them at the time. And so the deck remains, but we had wanted to see that patio go. And I think that's just unfortunately, there's nothing I can say that's going to change that. That's,
So can you educate me a little bit, because I'm a little confused about the whole conservation idea? These pavers are I mean, the sand between them, so the water goes down. We never have any puddling or anything. Now, if we take them out and put in plants, isn't it the same thing? The water's still gonna go down into the ground.
yeah, so
Like,
my
how is
bigger
this helping?
concern with that is that typically you put hardscape down, even if you call it a porous pavement, that type of construction, ultimately, it's not allowing water to penetrate fully down into the groundwater. It does, I mean, it may be distributing that water across the surface or slightly below the surface, but it doesn't allow full, and the more time that goes by, the less likely it is to allow that water to get through, because things start getting clogged and the pores start getting clogged, and it becomes, you may not have it puddling now, but sooner or later you start getting the puddling too. But in the view of the commission, some sort of planted softscape is a preferable solution to a hardscape, is what it comes down to. And I mean, typically, even when we do hardscape, we do allow hardscape. We require significant mitigation planting in place of that, or in lieu of that. So, or as a requirement for allowing that hardscape to occur. So, I mean, in this, well, under the old rules, you should have put, what was it, 2 to 1, I think it would have been.
Yeah.
So it would have been, just for an example, if that was a 100 square foot patio, you'd have to put 200 square feet of planting somewhere in between the patio and the resource area, but you don't even have that. That's the other issue, and that's why we were so adamant about removing the patio in the first place. So that's my probably a longer sorted story than any of the commissioners wanted to hear, but
Well, no,
when somebody's hanging around.
can we just, if you want to, if you can go back to that picture real quick, because this is in the direction of looking towards our neighbor, but if you actually looked the other way, and I think a couple of the gentlemen saw it as well as Brittany, there's the parking lot right next door to us, which was redone in the last couple of years. And you can't quite see it from here, but there's literally a parking lot right next to us. And so, which was redone, and again, it's almost the same exact as the wall. If you kind of extend it out from the wall, you got the parking lot right there. And so we're trying to understand why
The
it's
parking
an issue
lot's
right
much
here, but it's not
lower.
an issue right next door to us that was
brand new.
redone within the last couple of years. So it just, and we're
But the
up-
parking
we're up-
lot was a permitted structure.
But if I could
The
get this.
patio is not. So obviously, we're going to allow a permitted structure to be replaced and maintained. I mean, if that were the case, then we would say anytime a house has to be repaired or replaced, then it's like, no, you can't do it.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, that's the difference between your situation and the parking lot. Is ultimately it comes down to that was never supposed to be there in the first place. And to be honest with you, obviously, even in 2008, we didn't want to see that patio there.
Yeah.
And we would not have permitted it, and that's what we were telling them at the time, is that we wouldn't permit the patio like that. So we're certainly not going to allow it to remain, and that's what it comes down to.
I'm just wondering if it's possible, just given, if it, and I know I sent an email, and I think Brittany said she forwarded, hopefully everybody got a chance to read it, and saw the picture of what happened a year ago, from, December of last year, and where the water does come up, and it doesn't come up where we are, because we're up higher. I mean, if there is going to be water that comes up, it's going to go across the parking lot, which is down next to us, and then it goes up the street and then down diagonally as well. So we're just trying to understand and see if maybe there's an exception here, similar to the wall. You can see it right here. where-
Unfortunately, I don't know if this picture is proving the case that you want it to, because it does show that your home is diverting floodwater from its natural path to fill in the lower lying areas around it. And I do understand that it does flood often. And it is different because the coastal bank on your property has been replaced by an artificial structure, whereas the coastal bank in the parking lot hasn't been changed from any structures. So it's still serving its original, its natural purpose and service, whereas yours has been altered. So
Wasn't looking at it that way.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand, if you look at it from the whole flow of the water, even if the wall wasn't there and so forth.
the water would be flowing under your house. If
Yeah.
it were set on pilings, it would be uninterrupted
Yeah,
flow.
because we've never had water.
That was that
We've got a
December.
crawl space below the actual house. We don't have a basement, we've got a crawl space. We've never had water in there. I mean, it's just not, it's not a place where the water is going to get to. So that's why we're just trying to see if there's a,
You're talking about the size of the storms. You haven't had water, you will in the future. Storms are going to get bigger. You're just maybe lucky you haven't had a big enough storm to get, your wall is going to help. But as you just pointed out, the water is going to come up from your neighbor, go through. So I think that you'd be better off having something that absorbs the water faster in front of your house. And those kind of permeable, from my viewpoint, those don't work that well. As Ed pointed out, they, accumulate dirt. A town would probably actually come in and vacuum or replace, or at least open up the pores between those bricks. So if you wanted to maintain that, you'd have to go in there and do a pretty expensive maintenance. And then you might get a little, but once you get 2 or 3, 4 inches of storm, I don't know the numbers, but you're going to have a lot of water. So I think you'd be a lot better off without that patio. So it's not just the ecosystem, which I talked to you about when I was out there, but, there's a lot of reasons why I think you're better off without it.
is it, going back to that previous picture, Brittany, I'm sorry. Is it possible to maybe, if we do something on the other side, our side, I'll call it this side of the wall, the left side of the wall, to maybe, instead of having it come up, near where the deck is, if it were just partially coming up towards it, just so you've got that extra buffer on the other side of the wall, because we,
How many feet out is it?
yeah, because
from the wall?
we have, I think I put it in the email, we have, in my opinion, we have the largest buffer zone on the other side of the wall as any other house on Windermere Road or even on the beach. I mean, if anybody sells a house further up from us, I mean, there's going to have to be exceptions for them because they're literally right on the water. There's no buffer zone area like there is with our property.
Are you just asking for room for access around your deck?
I'm sorry?
Are you asking for some access space around your deck?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at worst case, I mean, obviously, the request would be if we, to leave it the way it is, but if that's not going to happen, then if we can lessen it, just so there's more room there. Because right now, there's very little room on the other side of the decking. And the other thing that would be nice, if it's not possible, I get it, but, the Rosa Rugosa on the other side of the wall, they get suffocated. If you go back to that picture again, you can actually see, you can see that white, if you go to the previous one, you can see the white kind of
door.
coming to the next door neighbors. it kind of suffocates the Rosa rugosa.
Yeah, so those are native, though.
That's a native.
That's,
Can't be
that's
meddling. Those are back,
okay.
a high tide
high
bush.
tide bush, right?
Yeah, so those, you can't do any management to those.
It just comes, it
It
sits on
appeared to be
top.
taking over and,
Yeah.
and
Honestly, I'd rather see the high tide bush
Yeah,
than the
the high tide bush is a better plant.
Gotcha.
It's a better plan.
Rosa
yeah.
rugosa.
Okay, I just wasn't sure how that all worked.
And
so.
how far back is your neighbors from the water?
They have a new order of conditions that requires 10 feet of planting
Apparently
all
they're
the way
gonna be-
up in front of the deck. So
They're further back though, aren't they?
No, the
back.
house itself? No, I think it's
Pretty close.
similar.
I don't know, I can pull it up.
Well, again, I mean, we aren't here to discuss the neighbors. It's like we're discussing what should have been done in 2008. And the
Yeah, I don't-
reality is that, you know, you were lucky that that the wall was granted. And I think, again, certainly the wall would not be permitted today. The only reason I even feel remotely comfortable with the wall being where it is the fact that you've got the super vegetated area in front of it, and hopefully the high tide bush will continue to flourish and stay nice and thick like that, so that any water that does come through in flood water will be slammed into the vegetation first and not redirected by the wall. But again, we're not here to talk about the wall, we're here to talk about the patio that needs to be replaced or removed, so.
Yeah,
I don't care if you keep a small path of, you know,
like
some
an
sort of
access path in
soft-covered
front.
path in front of the deck,
Fit.
but again, I don't want to see the patio there. So no hardscape between the deck and the wall. I don't think I can say it any clearer or succinctly.
that was clear.
Is there any other questions from the board?
No, unfortunately not.
There's one date we may have to revise. So we'll need a planting plan, and right now I have the end of January,
So the planting plan,
because there's no plan associated with this, it just says native planting. So we need a plan. It could be a sketch, but maybe the end of March instead.
yeah, I don't need but there's nothing, it doesn't have to be a stamp plan or anything else, just literally a sketch plan. You could use like a
Just need to know what-
GIS or aerial photo, that sort of thing.
But other than that,
But I'm good with the dates as long as everything is done, and you just need to make sure that the plan, obviously the planting plan should come in at least a month before the deadline, because we have to be able to respond to it, and then you have to be able to,
buy plants.
you know, source the plants and that sort of thing, so. But I think I'm looking at the May 31st, 2025 deadline as the that's when full restoration needs to be done. So the patio has to come out, a plan has to be approved, and you have to have everything planted by the 31st of May.
Would you have a recommendation as to what sort of plant? You have a list
Sure.
of plants?
I can give you a list and ones that I recommend.
Right now, it can't be Rosa rugosa because we have small grandchildren running around out there and they can't be in the thorns.
No, I'd rather not. Rosa rugosa is,
Not native, but I'm happy to provide you a list of plants with different heights and everything for the area. Similar.
User-friendly.
It's not possible to get a little bit of extra space there from, you know, when you come off the deck to,
I told you, I don't mind if you had, just for walking around, that sort of thing, but I don't want to see any hardscape there.
Just make a little, place they can get down and walk.
okay.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of, I'm sorry, I need a motion to approve the amended enforcement order, amended for date. Jack, is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
I'll send you an email with the enforcement order and the list of plans. I'll send you an email with everything.
Send an email, okay. So just trying to,
Is it something I can draw?
Yes.
she's very good at drawing.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're going to have to table the minutes until next week because we don't have a quorum for that. So I will table minute approval for December 6th, 2024 to January
Second,
2nd.
Next year.
next year. Take care, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other business not reasonably anticipated? No? All right, well, with that then, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn and we won't come back until next year?
So moved.
So, second,
Is there a second?
yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimous. We stand adjourned at 5:54.